Hello, everyone. Welcome to Peace Through Truth. It's Friday, September 25th, 2015, and I'm a little late to the party on this one. I actually came across this article this morning posted by a friend on Fascist Book, and I felt it important enough to share with everyone. This was posted by Forbes on May 19th, 2015 at 9:53 a.m. Updated NASA data, global warming not causing any polar ice retreat. Says here, updated data from NASA satellite instruments reveal the Earth's polar ice caps have not receded at all since the satellite instruments began measuring the ice caps in 1979. Since the end of 2012, moreover, total polar ice extent has largely remained above the post-1979 average. The updated data contradict one of the most frequently asserted global warming claims, that global warming is causing the polar ice caps to recede. The timing of the 1979 NASA satellite instrument launch could not have been better for global warming alarmists. The late 1970s marked the end of a 30-year cooling trend. As a result, the polar ice caps were quite likely more extensive than they had been since at least the 1920s. Nevertheless, this abnormally extensive 1979 polar ice extent would appear to be the normal baseline when comparing post-1979 polar ice extent. Updated NASA satellite data show the polar ice caps remained at approximately their 1979 extent until the middle of the last decade. Beginning in 2005, however, the polar ice modestly receded for several years. By 2012, polar sea ice had receded by approximately 10% from the 1979 measurements. Total polar ice area, factoring both sea and land ice, has receded by much less than 10%, but alarmists focused on the sea ice loss as proof of global warming crisis. It says here, a 10% decline in polar sea ice is not very remarkable, especially considering the 1979 baseline was abnormally high anyway. Regardless, global warming activists and the compliant news media frequently and vociferously claimed the modest polar ice cap retreat was a sign of impending catastrophe. Al Gore even predicted the Arctic ice cap would completely disappear by 2014. In late 2012, however, polar ice dramatically rebounded and quickly surpassed the post-1979 average. Ever since, the polar ice caps have been at a greater average extent than the post-1979 mean. Now, in May 2015, the updated NASA data show polar sea ice is approximately 5% above the post-1979 average. During the modest decline in 2005 through 2012, the media presented a daily barrage of melting ice cap stories. Since the ice caps rebounded, and then some, how have the media reported the issue? Now, the rest of this is probably just fluff, and I'm not going to be the one to tell you that NASA is a reliable source for anything, because they're not. But it goes on to say the frequency of polar ice cap stories may have abated, but the tone and content has not changed at all. Here are some of the titles of news items I pulled yesterday from the 2 pages of a Google News search for polar ice caps. And again, this was published back May 19th, 2015. Climate change is melting more than just the polar ice caps. 2020, Antarctic ice shelf could collapse. And Arctic ice caps shockingly rapid slide into the sea. New satellite maps show polar ice caps melting at unprecedented rate. The only Google News items even hinting that the polar ice caps may not have melted so much, indeed not at all, came from overtly conservative websites. Basically, they're trying to say conspiracy theorist sites. The mainstream media is alternating between maintaining radio silence on the extended run of above-average polar ice and falsely asserting the polar ice caps are receding at an alarming rate. To be sure, receding polar ice caps are an expected result of the modest global warming we can expect in the years ahead. In and of themselves, receding polar ice caps have little, if any, negative impact on human health and welfare, and likely a positive benefit by opening up previously ice-entombed land to human, animal, and plant life. Nevertheless, polar ice cap extent will likely be a measuring stick for how much of the planet is or is not warming. The Earth has warmed modestly since the Little Ice Age ended a little over 100 years ago, and the Earth will likely continue to warm modestly as a result of natural and human factors. As a result, at some point in time, NASA satellite instruments should begin to report a modest retreat of the polar ice caps. The modest retreat, like that which happened briefly from 2005 to 2012, would not be proof or evidence of a global warming crisis. Such a retreat would merely illustrate that global temperatures are continuing their gradual recovery from the Little Ice Age. Such recovery, despite alarmist claims to the contrary, would not be uniformly or even on balance detrimental to human health and welfare. Instead, an avalanche of scientific evidence indicates recently warming temperatures have significantly improved human health and welfare, just as warming temperatures have always done. Now, I apologize about how monotone and monotonous that was, but I think nonetheless, it being Forbes, that's a source that you can use to talk to the sleeple with. You can use that as a catalyst to help prove your point, since it's more of a respected news organization amongst the sheep. Now, obviously, I think the most damning part of this comes in the first few paragraphs, but the proof is in the pudding, people. I don't want to bother you anymore. I do appreciate your time as always, and if you haven't already, please like and subscribe.